Hello, everybody. So, I think I might be back to hating Henry VIII again. I really don't know. It's such a complicated issue, and the Reformation in Britain presents so many lines of inquiry that seem important. Some lead nowhere in terms of the moral issues associated with it. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of darkness that I just suspect behind it. And I've been looking into other issues as well. For instance, I tried to look up recipes for English beer from the Middle Ages, and I found a few sources. There are some recipes out there, but the only sources we have for recipes for English ale, real ale, coming from the Middle Ages, they're all coming from elite families, households. The obvious sources you'd be expecting to find would be, of course, from monasteries, monks brewing beer, which is one of the things that monks, all over Europe, famous for. But the great sort of tradition of Trappist beers, in sort of Germany and Belgium, famously, Netherlands. All the monasteries on the continent, they've kept alive their very, very old traditions of brewing. One of my favourite beers is Lef. That's from 1346, is when that brewery was founded, that Belgian beer. It's delicious as well. Everyone should try it. It's the best. But yeah, that sort of tradition in Britain, it doesn't exist, and it would have done. It's very troubling, A lot of things in history are unforgivable. Mass killings are usually are definitely unforgivable. I don't think, there's a lot of ways of really trying to argue even for mass literacy and the ownership of a Bible in English and all this sort of stuff that Britain did help to bring about. I don't think I can condone the destruction of documents and books. This dissolution of the monasteries incident. I just written an article comparing it to the destruction of the Library of Alexandria. And, for our history anyway, not for history on the continent, it sort of was like that. We're now left with a picture of the Middle Ages in Britain, where it's like, oh, the poor peasants who've been eating a diet of thin gruel and pottage. Because, the monastic sources detailing, what peasants really were eating, and, we have very recently a massive study of earthenware pots from 2019 actually, where they're analysing the chemical residues left on those pots. We find that peasants, far from eating pottage and thin gruel and then working the fields, were eating beef quite often, probably defunct dairy cow, mutton was a big one. Not lamb, that would go to rich people. Not venison, that's rich people food. Certainly not the suckling pig. That's like lobster for the Middle Ages, and all that sort of stuff, all the rich people food. We know about that from sort of diaries kept by, elite families, and we know all that from the records of the great households. So that's where all the information is coming from. But this vast cache of documents from the monasteries, it's gone. We haven't got it anymore. What a shame. Considering the building projects that were going on in the Middle Ages, we think of it as a muddy and brutal, unsophisticated, violent period. It was anti-intellectual and, bleak and fearful. It needn't have been like that, I don't think. Not necessarily. you know, sure it wasn't as advanced as the ages that succeeded it, but I don't know. And then again, it's sort of like, I lived in Salisbury for a bit, and you know that town is of course dominated by a huge medieval cathedral. Like they built that, but they were like all living in straw huts, and they were all chattels, or most of them were. Like, I don't know. Like, what was surrounding the cathedral? No houses, but it wasn't a vibrant centre of trade and commerce, and there weren't craft guilds, and there weren't, you know, people engaging in all sorts of commercial activities. And furthermore, there wasn't learning and education. But we know there was, you know, in the scholastic tradition. But I think we don't know enough about that part of our history. And yeah, that probably has come about through document destruction. I'm sorry to say, but you know, I mean, come on, the fact I can't find anything about monastic brewing in the Middle Ages in Britain, you know, plenty about it on the continent, even though they guard their recipes quite closely, as I understand it. But yeah, we'd still have brands of beer, you know, from that tradition now, if that was the case. So, like, this haunting figure of 57,000 executed people, is it... I'm just thinking, like, is it worth, like, for literacy in their own language? Like, I'm just thinking now, like, is the printing press, that was going to lead to mass literacy? Yes, probably in Latin first, but English, like, probably not the Bible in English, but so what? But, like, Canterbury Tales, like, that would have got printed eventually, yeah, in English. And, you know, Beowulf and whatever in the Old English tradition, and then some new form of English would have, like, coalesced out of the scholarship of the Old and Middle English traditions, which, you know, would have arisen through some book printing. And yeah, it wouldn't all have been, like, just, like, it must be Catholic. I mean, Dante got away with it back in the 14th century, printing the Divine, or publishing the Divine Comedy in Italian. So it's like, people, by the way, were reading Jaws. It's not like English books were banned under Catholicism. Just the Bible. It's like well, on one level, you know, you can sort of see where they're coming from on that level. It's like, firstly, we don't want you to translate the Bible into English, because in the process of you translating it from Vulgar Latin, you're going to fuck it up, and the meaning's going to be different. And then you're going to start a new church, which is going to rival ours. That'll lead to all sorts of problems. And we engaged in endless theological discussions about the sort of meanings of different parts of it, which will never get resolved, and we'll never agree on anything, because you probably translated it incorrectly, and then you'll accuse us of, like, not really getting your point, whereas we think you're committing heresy. So it's like, because what happened? Exactly that, basically. So, no, I can't condone a mass murder. No. How much would it have slowed Britain down? It might have been a good thing if Britain had been slowed down. I mean, trade in human bodies, or in human beings, I should say. And maybe, I don't know, maybe not. Yeah, and, like, we all like the Tudors, don't we? My favourite Tudor was always Elizabeth. I thought she was great, fantastic. And I was like, Henry, do I like him or don't I like him? I mean, he's cool, sort of. He's very much like a king. Edward, pretty forgettable. But then again, actually, he introduced the Book of Common Prayer. He might be, for that reason alone, our greatest monarch. And really our greatest monarch. Not Henry or Elizabeth. Then, like Mary, everyone hates Mary, don't they? Bloody Mary, you know, but like from the Catholic perspective, like, you know, like she's trying to protect what she sees as civilization, possibly. She's just seen the desecration of the monasteries, destruction of documents, possibly the killings of tens of thousands of people. And she's coming to be Queen Regent of the British Isles. She's like, yes, burn them! Burn more of them! Like, as a revenge, it's like, we're going to show you the error of your ways. You know, but feel the you know, we'll put you on the rack and ultimately tie you to a stake and, you know, burn you and bring the Inquisition into Britain, trying to sort this mess out. And who knows how much of a mess it really was. And, you know, like, and to what extent, even today, has all the history produced felt the taint of the urge to be propagandistic and been tainted with nationalism. Because, you know, we're quite an insular nation. We're an island. We don't have, like, people. For a very long time, we didn't really have, like, people within the country from outside of it reporting on events objectively. Except, of course, when we had the Catholic Church. You know, like, the Catholic Church, yeah, when it comes to sort of events within Britain, could probably be relied upon to be pretty impartial, since it's annexed to Rome. It's behaving sort of like a supranational organisation in a sense, sort of like the UN or the EU or something. I mean, but then again, like, our administration isn't full of EU officials, so it's a bit different and it's a bit more, yeah, totalitarian. But it wasn't really totalitarian until Henry made himself the head of the church. And it's like, just link it all together, had separation of powers before, just put it together in a pyramid power structure with the king at the top. As like controlling everything all the way down. And you just think of the amount of control, say, the Soviets managed to wrest over their media and, like, their academics and what they're producing, and even over the minds and abilities to communicate with their populace, all on the threat of being sent to forced labour camps. Maybe is very, very likely when it comes to Catholic descent. And I think there would have been quite a lot of it under Henry. You know, exactly the same sort of thing was going on, except it wouldn't have been the forced labour camp, it would have been the chopping block or the gallows. You know, that makes sense to me. That narrative, I'm sorry to say, and you know, it wouldn't have been just monks and nuns and friars and priests. It would have been all sorts of people with sort of deep, sort of abiding Catholic convictions, trying to organise, trying to keep their culture alive in one way or another. Yeah. And we don't get towards it. You know, we get to all this unlikely story that Well, we know he killed people. He killed people, sure. He killed Anne Boleyn and Catherine Parr, I think it was. Was it Catherine? I can't. Killed the Thomases, Moore and Cromwell. Killed John Fisher and Robert Askin. Got this list of about 30 people so he killed. That's how many he killed. I'm sure. Okay. And that is history class, you know. But you know, when it comes to the Red Revolution, they killed between 40,000 and 250,000 people. That's how many people went under the guillotine in the Terror. Think of it. Think of that. I was like, well, yeah, Hitler, 6 million. And Stalin, 40 million, you know. We know the numbers for everywhere else. Here, we're like, I'm done. You didn't kill anyone. Just a Reformation, you know, like, just, you know, just rip down the structure of public administration from accountancy to brewing and, you know, printing essentially. You know, got rid of sort of our media establishments. You know, what the monks were running were publishing houses, in essence, in fact, and just replaced it all with state institutions. That just went off without a hitch, you know. And so it was like, well, it's not like a revolution, is it? It was a revolution. Yeah, the Catholic Church had a hell of a lot of power in Britain. Yeah, I mean, the king had, some power, the most power, but the Catholic Church is still incredibly powerful. And, you know, leaving the EU, like comparing to Brexit or something, that's not a good analogy, I don't think. It's a bit more entrenched, it's a bit deeper than that. So yeah, I believe a lot of people could have died during that. Very, very possibly. And yeah, I don't know if it's a good thing, really. You know. Standard narrative of the Reformation, Britain. It did lead us to global dominance. It did. And it profoundly impacted our culture. It gave people literacy in English because of that prayer book would have exploded. And it did lead to things like the works of William Shakespeare. And that alone is a beautiful, beautiful thing. But it did come with a human cost. And that has been overshadowed and is not looked at in history. And yeah, I found this source out there, there's some English heritage sources. All the monks and nuns, 14,000 of them, they're paid a pension of £5 each, and some amounts of shillings and pence. Right, what, a year? £70,000. The Crown earns £100,000 a year. I don't think so. Somehow. But all this sort of thing, and I think again of we only killed 1,600 witches, and they were hanged, none of them were burned. None of them were. Right? I don't believe you. That is all. We never had witch burns in the Middle Ages. Lord Henry, with the dissolution of the monasteries, see a tantalising opportunity to eradicate, let's say, a few blemishes in our history from the records. It's possible, I think, that's all, but I don't thank you everyone for watching. Bye bye. Love you lots. I'll see you soon.